I was a singer-songwriter prior to this and toured a lot, and one of the places that I toured was Southeast Asia, and so I saw a lot of sexual exploitation there and got really curious to learn more about what was going on and what just kind of all sorts of stuff around sexual exploitation. And what that led me to was a real interest in human trafficking, both sex and labor trafficking. And so when I went back to Los Angeles where I was living, when I wasn't touring, I volunteered for an organization called CAST, Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, which is a really neat organization in Los Angeles. And I learned about trafficking through that experience and through educating myself, reading books and things like that, and eventually applied for a fellowship at Polaris in DC, which is a leading anti-trafficking organization, and worked for the National Human Trafficking Hotline and did the fellowship there. And love brought me to the Eastern Shore, and where I found For All Seasons when I went back to school to get my master's in social work, totally shifting careers, wanting to figure out how I could make an impact in the anti-trafficking movement in a more significant way. For All Seasons was really interested in doing work in the anti-trafficking issue, and so here I am. I mean, the worldwide estimates in 2016, the International Labor Organization estimated that 23 million people are on a global scale trafficked, and they're really conservative estimates because this is a really hard crime to identify. It's not always prosecuted. There are so many crimes that happen within trafficking that sometimes those crimes are the crimes that are prosecuted, so those numbers aren't demonstrative of what is going on with the issue. And trafficking can happen in someone's home with their relative. It could be in a sex trafficking situation. It could be a grandmother trading her granddaughter for trading sex for a discount in the utility bill or in the rent. So it's a little bit different and more local than people realize. Just in this area, the referrals that I've gotten, the interactions that I've gotten to see, people didn't know that what was happening was a trafficking situation. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I guess one of the first steps is to help people understand what is trafficking, how to identify when someone is being trafficked, how to serve someone who's being trafficked, breaking intergenerational cycles of violence, of poverty, of other factors that make people vulnerable to exploitation. And we have a lot of things in our area that make our area particularly attractive to trafficking. We have a large agricultural area, other places where labor trafficking can take place is nail salons, in construction work, in the hospitality industries, and then we have the internet, so we have lots of places for people to advertise and solicit. Certainly, this is happening here, and what many experts believe is it's just not being identified, and that in my short time that I've been here, that has been my experience as well, that people don't recognize it as trafficking. You know, that person's just being deviant. That person just is promiscuous. One of the things that For All Seasons has done is committed to train all of our staff, which is quite a large staff. And that means people are identifying people who have been in trafficking situations. So I've had several clinicians come to me and say, hey, I think my client may have been trafficked. I think my client has some red flags for trafficking. And so I'm able to then, if the client chooses, able to consult with the client to see what are some options for them for services moving forward. So some of that is post-conviction relief. So if someone has a prostitution charge on their record, which is keeping them from housing, from jobs, from all sorts of things, a potential is that they could look into, and I can help connect them with some resources to look into getting a vacatur for that charge. We are identifying people in jails. So a survey that was done with the National Survivors Network, they surveyed 130 sex trafficking survivors. Of that 130, 91% had been arrested at least once, and 40% had been arrested 9 times or more. So in the criminal justice system, it's not being caught. That's the real goal right now, is to educate, and that's why we're doing these presentations is to educate and make aware professionals who may intersect with people who may be in trafficking situations, whether that's someone in the criminal justice system, law enforcement, healthcare personnel, social workers. There's so many ways, so many places where people can intervene and people may come across but just don't know, oh, that's a red flag for trafficking. I better take a closer look at this situation. So we at For All Seasons have developed some programming to help other counties and other community members get informed about what is human trafficking, what are the signs of human trafficking, how can we respond when we see it, and how can we identify those who may be trafficked.